Hello everybody, my name is Robert and this is Review Clue. Today we have a super quick dive into the Windows 11 leaked build that came out. So this was leaked literally a couple of days ago, so I decided that I wanted to get my hands on it and start playing around with it and show you guys some of the new UI elements and just what to expect from that event next week. This is currently running inside of a virtual machine on my desktop. I don't plan to use this on an actual machine because I don't know where this build came from. For all I know, it could be filled with malware and God knows what else, and for that reason I'm not going to be sharing this. If you want to find it, you can find it easily enough on Google. So what we're doing here is we're just going through that installation process and we can see that nice new Windows 11 logo. Strangely though, as we go through the setup, you'll notice that logo changes back to the old Windows 10 logo, and that just shows you how early of a build this actually is. I'm obviously going to speed up a lot of this process until we get to the out-of-the-box experience, because that's where things really start to change. The actual setup and install is pretty standard for basically anything Windows. So let's watch this and quickly jump through the whole setup process until we get to the out-of-the-box experience. Do you know what, while we're here, let's quickly talk about the licensing agreements, because we can see some of the new UI elements coming across here. For example, we can see the new scroll bar, which I'm currently playing with, that kind of has this much more minimal look, and so do those click boxes. Everything feels a little more unified and a little more flat. Of course, this is just how we would normally set up Windows. This Windows install process looks exactly the same as it did for Windows 8, 10 and 11. So here we are in the Windows out-of-the-box experience, and this is where everything gets so much more elegant. We can see all of these brand new little animations and a much more poppy design. We can see some shadowing, and we can see almost a lot of depth going on here. That normal circular spinning logo is very similar to what we've had before, but everything else about this out-of-the-box experience is brand new and really exciting. We are unfortunately missing Cortana here. I know how everybody loved having Cortana speak to them while setting up their Windows computers, but unfortunately she is gone and we're left to fend for ourselves. Rest in peace, Cortana. Can I get an F in the comments section down below for her? But as we just go through the normal setup process, obviously it's going to ask you to sign in with a Microsoft account. If you do decide to download this as a beta, please don't use your main Microsoft account, because this is a beta build. You should not have this, and I'm just being very cautious that Microsoft might start banning accounts that have downloaded this, so I created a brand new account that is just for this build. Let's quickly finish up that out-of-the-box experience, and you can see the "this may take a few minutes" screen, and this looks amazing. This looks a little bit like how the HoloLens originally did. It's so nice to see those nice pulsing, flowing colours going on in the background. And in a second, we're obviously going to boot back into the main operating system. But let's go ahead and just cut this part of the video here, and we will reboot once it's all done its setup process, and we'll talk about all of the new elements for Windows 11. Okay, so as we're booting in for the first time, we do see that brand new Windows 11 logo. I mean, it's a nice logo, it's simple enough. All they've basically done is just change the angle, but it's a nice change. And what it also does is it gives off that flat design that we can see throughout almost all of the new UI, which we'll get into now. This is of course running off of a VM, so if you're seeing a little bit of slowdown, then that is just because it's a virtual machine. I don't trust this on my main machine. I don't plan to override Windows with this new leaked copy. As we heard there, that's one of the new sounds. There are absolutely tons of them. Basically every sound and every UI element you can think of has been changed in some way to look a little more Windows 11-y, I suppose. So as we can see, the lock screen actually hasn't really changed at all. Once I've typed in my PIN, we just get chucked straight to the desktop and we can see all new stuff. The actual Windows 11 build obviously will not be this slow. As I mentioned, I'm on a VM, I haven't really given it enough resources to do anything here. So it's enough to get it by, but certainly don't be expecting super fast blazing speeds. If I need to, I'll cut bits as and when. Okay, so here we are. We are inside of Windows 11. And one of the first things that we're going to notice is that taskbar. This is an incredibly major change that's happened. But I do find it a little bit odd that we can actually just rotate that or set that back to the left-hand side. We can do this in actually the preferences. So if we go to our personalization preferences, we see some of the new rounded corner windows. Every piece of the UI will have these new rounded corners. It's not actually everywhere, as I'll show you in a little bit, but this is the plan, that everything will look a lot softer and a lot more rounded. If we go down to our taskbar settings here, we can actually align it to the left-hand side, and we see that lovely little animation of all of the icons moving from left to centre. I'm going to keep it in the centre though, as that's clearly where it's designed to be. As soon as we hit that start menu button, we're seeing some of these pinned apps, and we can also go to our all apps and we can see everything that's happening here. Most of these applications are just standard and the same ones that you see on Windows 10, just with some updated icons. For example, Notepad, when I launch it, is just the normal Notepad with these new rounded edges. We can also see that new animation of the things coming in. So as you open and close applications, they almost glide and disappear, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. Let's go into that file explorer and we can see again those rounded edges and all of the new icons as well. This looks very similar to all of the other Windows elements that we've had from Windows 10, so it will feel familiar but distinctly new. We also have our search functionality here, and this is basically like Spotlight search that you find on the Mac. We also have this one next to it, which is the task view. Task view is really powerful. This gives us multiple desktops, so we can have multiple desktops for different environments. For example, I've just created a new desktop and we will call it Work. So this is going to be my work desktop, and this is going to be my play desktop. So as I swap over to my work desktop, I can go ahead and actually change and personalize this background. For example, let's choose one of the new Windows 11 images. I personally really like this one. I think it looks really nice and elegant. And then as we go back down to task view here, we can actually see that desktop 1 is going to be my play desktop, has a completely different background to that of my work desktop. And we can have as many desktops as realistically we want. I don't know what the actual limit is here. There we go, so we've hit our limit. We can have a lot of desktops open at one time. I don't know why you would want so many desktops open, but it is viable if that's something that you would want to do. I'm going to go ahead and close all of these though, because I only really need one open. Next to that though, we do have this new button, and this is our widgets section. So now that that's loaded, we can see the time along the top. Obviously that's not the actual time. We can also see weather, stocks and news. This was all news that's personalized to me. Because I signed in with my Microsoft account, this is all things that Microsoft believes I would be interested in. And these news stories are literally infinite. It will just continually create and give me new news stories that it thinks I might enjoy. I can react to all of these as well. We've seen something very similar come into Windows 10 recently in the most recent update. But it's really nice to see it here in this more unified bar that feels much more part of the OS. So what else can we do with Windows 11? Well, let's go ahead and just take a look at the terminal. Windows Terminal is installed by default now, and that's really nice to see. We don't have to use command prompt all the time. We can go ahead and actually use Windows Shell, which has everything in one, from command prompt to PowerShell, and even the Azure Cloud Shell if we need to use cloud for whatever reason. So that is now by default installed, and we can also do some really nice stuff with multitasking. They've taken multitasking and they've ramped it up to 11 in Windows 11. As I start to load new menus up, we can go ahead and hover over the button on the top here, and we can see a few different options. This used to be a power tool in Windows 10, but it's really nice to see it come alive and be actually usable here. So we can click and bring it to the left-hand side, and then, for example, on our Microsoft Edge, once I've closed down all of this, we can put Microsoft Edge up to the top right, and we'll open up the Microsoft Store as well and bring that down to the bottom left or to the bottom right. This is a really nice way to be able to manage your desktops and multitask really quickly. But let's go ahead and close all of that and take a look around the settings, because there's some new stuff here as well. Let's go ahead and jump into display settings, and we can see that actually this does support HDR. Obviously your monitor has to support it, and the games or applications that you're using have to support it, but it is here and we can use it. Unfortunately, the monitor I'm using right now doesn't support HDR, and you can see that even the computer is struggling just because of the sheer lack of resources that I've given it. But let's jump back and see what else we've got in all of the settings overall. All of this is going to feel incredibly familiar to basically anyone who has used Windows 10. The main differences are, one, under the hood, and two, these design changes for all of these new icons that just make the application and the OS as a whole feel much more modern. What I'm going to go ahead and do though is actually jump into our personalization settings, and I can show you some of the new cool stuff that's in there. For example, when we move over to colours, we obviously have our light and dark mode. Personally, I love how dark mode looks, but we can also see that we have dark modes for each of these backgrounds as well. I would like to see it actually change over time, but this, I guess, isn't a big problem. We can turn off transparent effects if we desire, but obviously to keep that nice Windows 11 aesthetic, we'll be keeping those on. Let's go over to our backgrounds, and we can see that there is a light mode, but there is also a dark mode version of this skin. Each one of these backgrounds is incredibly complementary and looks just stunning. The notifications panel is pretty standard as well for what Windows 10 was. Do remember, this is an incredibly early build of Windows 11. Many people shouldn't be running this because it's just been leaked. So expect much more changes in the coming weeks, especially next week when they have the full launch event for this. I'm really excited to see it. We can see here the Microsoft Store. The Microsoft Store is due to have some big changes, including being able to actually launch exe files. These are just the normal executable files, and people can host their programs and their executables on the Windows Store and avoid those 30% fees, which I'm really interested to see how they handle this. So we can also see here, we've got the new power button and the new user button as well. But that is pretty much everything for Windows 11 for this insider build. I'm sure if we dig about, we'll find some more. But what is quite interesting is each of these applications can actually be installed. So let's install Twitter, Spotify, and Messenger. Each of these are actually web apps. They're not native apps. But I think this is the future of where Windows appears to be going, with these web apps that are much lighter. The whole idea of this OS is it's able to run on much lighter hardware, so you could be running this on your mobile technically. But let's go ahead and just run the Twitter app here, which appears to be opening the Microsoft Store. I'm not entirely sure why it's doing that. When I was testing this earlier, it actually launched the Twitter app. There's an error, I see. Wait a few minutes and try again. Of course, this is an early build, so do expect errors here, there, and everywhere. So let's just close it and wait and see if Spotify installs. Yep, so Spotify installed there, and we heard that new sound again as well. So when we click Spotify, we're seeing one of the native web apps that shows up, and it is absolutely stunning. So we actually see some new file edit view in the top left corner here. I'm not sure if this is something that they plan to keep for everything, but we can see actually this app doesn't have the rounded edges like many of the others. And the multitasking doesn't work here either. So there is still a lot of work to do before this is publicly ready for release. But this was just a really quick dive into Windows 11 and exactly what we can do with it, and just some of those visual changes that are really, really exciting. What do you guys think of the new visual changes? When I first saw it, I thought Linux distribution, but that's just me and that's my nerdy ways. Do you like the way that this looks? Do you think you'll be installing this as soon as it comes out? Will it be a 3 update? Who knows? We'll find out next week at the Microsoft event. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video or if you have any comments about Windows 11, let me know in the comment section down below. While you're down there, hit subscribe as well, hit that like button, all of that jazz, and I will catch you in the next one. Adios.